Today's episode of the anatomy of the minority Muslim mindset, we are shooting in a graveyard. As you can see, uh, there's a golf course behind me, and I'm facing all the graves. Uh, so this is more to do with history. So I thought we will have a outdoor place to shoot, which was near my home. But anyway, let's start the episode for today. So it is built upon a story which I watched a movie when I was very young. It was called Umar Mukhtar, The Lion of the Desert. And it was basically about the resistance movement of the Libyan against the attack of Mussolini's forces to capture Libya. And Umar Mukhtar was a Quran teacher. He had organized guerrilla kind of warfare and frustrated the entire ambition of Mussolini to take over Libya. And finally, it culminated in a way that in the movie, in real life as well, he was captured, and in order to uh, diminish the movement, the resistance movement, what Mussolini decided that he should have him hanged in front of his people. So I'll just bring you to the last scene that he is reading his book Quran, and then he hands his book Quran, and then he takes his spectacle, and uh, the hangsman binds his hand, and spectacle is still in his hand, binds his hand behind him, and put the noose around his neck as he's standing in the stool, and the entire people is the audience to this hanging. So then the hangman pushed the stool on which he was standing, and then the body hangs, and immediately the spectacle falls from his hand. And I very well remember the graphic detail of the last scene, that the entire population was jubilant because they were celebrating. There's a famous thing called ululation of the Arab women. The very high-pitched sound they utter in marriages and in celebrating some occasion. So they were doing that. So they were celebrating that their leader is martyred, and then there was a young boy who was actually the son of one of the martyrs of the resistance movement. He ran up to the stool and picked the spectacle, and which actually symbolized that the resistance will continue. It will not die down because of uh, killing, or I will say, of Umar Mukhtar. What has that got to do with India? Well, a lot, because what happened is, following the Italian brutal occupation of Libya under the Khilafah, uh, there was there were public meetings all over the Indian subcontinent calling for support of our sacred Khalifa, the Sultan of Turkey, against the righteous, uh, most unrighteous and unjust war. The famous poet Allama Iqbal, his poem Jawab Shikwa was used in the Lahori Masjid, Bashahi Masjid, to collect funds which could be channeled to the Khilafah before the World War I, so that it became like a medical envoy to serve the Muslims for Turkey. Sheikh Ind Muhammad Hassan from Darul Uloom Deoband was a vocal voice of the upkeep of the Khilafah. He pledged the support of Indian Muslims for the Khilafah to the Osmani commanders in Hijaz. So there was a very famous movement called Letter Movement, the Reshmi Rumal Tehreek. It was organized by the Deobandi leaders between 1913 and 1920, aimed at freeing Indian from British rule by forming an alliance with the Osmani Khilafah and supporting the insurrection against the British. Thus, the Indian freedom movement was a part of a pan-Islamic movement. The Sheikh ul Hind was arrested as the plot was uncovered, and Sharif Hussain connived and handed him to the British, who then incarcerated him to the Guantanamo Bay of his time, the Malta. And then the famous book Ashirana Malta came into light. It throws light on the almost all the activities of the two great personalities of this subcontinent, who has sacrificed all their all they had for the cause of which was dear to them. That was Shaykh ul Hind, Maulana Mahmud ul Hassan, and Shaykh ul Islam, Maulana Syed Hussain Ahmad Madani. So, Ashurani Malta is the story of the perpetration of the British Raj in India against the will and the wishes of the inhabitants, and a historical record of the contribution to the Ulama Hind in the Indian struggle for the freedom from colonial rule. To some extent, it is also the history of development of the Deoband Madrasa in India. Prior to this, was influenced by Wahhabi movement. So I wanted to read an extract from this book, which really captures what actually was the role of ulama, the greatest ulama of our time, of that time. Uh, so, a page from that book. He says, "You ask me, what is difficult? I'll tell you, it is easy to go for asceticism, zuhud, and live the life of a recluse for years to enjoy in ecstasy. It is easy to opt for study of voluminous books for years and show the power of deep knowledge. It is also easy to sit in the corner of a monastery or sit in the chair of lectureship in a university. Ask me now, what is more difficult? I tell you, difficult it is to submit before your Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and with devotion and piety, render selfless service to His people's well-being. That is to say, to have a passionate and a restless heart that sometimes takes you to the mosque, that sometimes take you to the study circle, that takes you to the pulpit to preach and caution the people, and that sometimes also takes you to the political platform for the greater well-being of your community and for upholding the truth. And then your deeds earned you abuse from your people, and fetters a dark cell from your oppressive enemy. The well-being of people keep you engaged and disturbed in the day, and then in the darkness of night you stand before God like a monk. Indeed, difficult it is to sympathize with the common man and bear the pain and pangs of the Muslims that take away sleep from your night. And when the twilight of the dawn takes a wing, one becomes engaged in the seeking of forgiveness from his Lord. And then his religious, educational, and political engagements bring him to the twilight of evening. Soon darkness spreads its wing. Tired from their day's work, people are hurrying to their homes so that the laughter of their loved ones they may soothe their nerves and release their tensions. But what about the ones who has been overwhelmed by the grief of the suffering of his people, or the one who has taken a long journey, or the one who is exhausted, who is exhausting his energy in writing articles or in engaging in calling people towards his Creator, or one who himself is crying in his remembrance, seeking his forgiveness and soliciting his blessings? Indeed, this is the most difficult sunnah, and also true inheritance of the Prophet ﷺ. And according to the theme of Prophet's saying, this is the similarity between the Prophets who have gone by. Such a man is a true follower of the Prophet ﷺ. He is a reformer of his time. He is the intellectual of his time. He is the true guide. He is the epicenter of the world, and his life is the model for the world, worthy to be emulated, rather obligatory for every Muslim to emulate. So this was a page from that book, and it makes me very emotional when I read that, and I want the ulama of India to read this and to get inspired by this great personality. Inshallah, in the next episode we will tread upon two great personalities, the Ali brothers. Till then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.